everybody. Happy Tuesday. Today is our 110th episode of Let's Do Lunch, and we have a terrific show today. Um, as a reminder, folks, our chat is open, as is our Q&A area, so please introduce yourself in the chat. When you do that, you should select all panelists and attendees so that everyone can see your introductions. Also, you can put questions for our panel in the Q&A area, which is just to the left of the chat. Also, let me just point out that today is our last Future of Entertainment episode of 2020, and we will be resuming Let's Do Lunch in 2021, but we will be taking a break while we produce Future of Television, which is November 10th, 11th, and 12th, and then go into the holidays. You can find more information about Future of Television at televisionconference.com. Also, we have a special show this Friday. It's not a Let's Do Lunch, it's a DMW presentation that is going to be on politics and technology and innovation, and we'll be sending more information and posting details about it. It's a really interesting show with a member of the House of Representatives from the Silicon Valley area, as well as from Southern California. So we'll have representatives covering districts that are tech heavy and entertainment heavy. And so we'll send in more information. Oh, there is a post about it in the chat right now. So you can click on that to check out more information. So let me introduce you to our fantastic host, David Bloom. David, how's it going?
I am okay. I am coming here from sunny, sort of sunny Los Angeles. This is a photo from about the time that this whole thing started, 7 months ago, or depending on how you actually count time, 7,000 years ago, of downtown Los Angeles, and a very, if you see behind me, a very quiet Interstate 5, which never happens except in global pandemics.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
To help us get through the last few months, many of us have gone to alternative worlds and experiences that immerse us in another place. And one of the guys that's helped make that happen is joining us today. That would be one young Michael Medrano, a VP of marketing for Survios, which got its start low these many years ago, 7 years ago, I believe, as more focused on location-based experiences and other things. And now they've branched into all kinds of interactive experiences that aren't just in a big room that somebody else owns. They've gotten big and at home, and now they're moving into other kinds of gaming. So, Michael, welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Have a great show.
Great to be here. Thanks, Ned. Thanks, David.
So let's get started. Survios has its hands in a lot of stuff, but to begin with, you guys began moving about the time, a little before you showed up. I think you scared them into it or something, or they decided they need some heavy hitters to come in and make everything happen. They, oh, before I ask, I want to make a quick point. Folks, please, 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 share your LinkedIn profile, share who you are, share what you're looking for in the chat. Use that as an opportunity. Make sure to share it with panelists and attendees. Our only shot in this thing to act like we're in a room together is to act like we're in a room together, sharing some of the business connections we have. What are you looking for? Use that chat room to have a conversation. Use the Q&A to ask me questions that I'll try to work into the conversation with Michael here. But please, please, please put your links in there so folks can connect, because I think that's really important in this time of very complicated connections. So, Michael, real quick, you came on I guess early this year, and along with a new chief product officer, as you all were shifting from location-based experiences to other kinds of experiences. Talk a little bit about why you all left LBEs. It turned out to be pretty prescient given the little pandemic we've had, and why you're shifting into a broader approach to the game business. So first things, LBEs, goodbye or less hello, and then moving into the broader game space.
Yeah, so you know, the LBE space was great in the beginning. You know, I think when headsets were still prohibitively expensive, and even just you know, just the mechanics around VR weren't quite there. I mean, you know, as far as like getting nauseous and things like that.
The stitching and all that kind of stuff, the resolutions, all that stuff, right?
Exactly. And so, you know, that was definitely the dominant form of VR entertainment, particularly in Asia, and some parts of Europe. But the at home was still always part of the core in you know, North America and Western Europe. And so the other thing we started to notice too is, you know, the location based entertainment. You know, people are generally playing together, and you know, for, you know, usually for 15 to 30 minutes. So the depth of
Plus
the
an hour
game.
wait, right? There's usually an hour wait before you got to get.
Oh, yeah, I mean, hopefully we can get some throughput through, but yeah, I mean, that is another issue with that as well.
Yeah.
Certainly the throughput and just the availability of facilities. But the other thing from a product perspective we notice is that, you know, if we focus on kind of the core game at home where people are playing for hours at a time, or at least maybe not hours at a time, but they're playing a game for multiple hours over a period of time, right? Like, so we would focus on that depth, and then I think it's easier to kind of pull, you know, a moment or an experience out of that deeper game and kind of port it into location based. And so that became our philosophy kind of end of last year. And yeah, I mean, as you mentioned, obviously COVID has put a huge damper into that space. We're seeing, you know, our partners in China have seen maybe about a 50% recovery in the business on location based. Of course, you know, they're pretty far ahead of us in COVID, and even more so with kind of Europe kicking back up. So I think, you know, we're going to stick to our guns and kind of, you know, of course, monitor how things go in Asia. But yeah, we're all in on kind of home entertainment VR for
Yeah.
now.
All right. So real quickly though, to follow up, how big a presence do you guys have with those Asia partners? In what countries? China, obviously, as we said, is was well ahead of location-based experiences, building like multiple ones a month, I think, across that country. There was a lot of energy. There was even a giant VR amusement park, and et cetera. And now they, at least for now, put a put a damper on the coronavirus spread with very aggressive things you can do when you're an authoritarian government, and very aggressive measures. And their box office has now exceeded U.S. box office, which is like virtually zero at this point. So I presume it's the same thing with this, because it's kind of the same issues, maybe even more so. But you say they're coming back. You all have some presence there. Where else do you guys have a presence overseas?
Yeah, in Europe they embrace the arcade, you know, VR arcade model a bit more, but still it's still, you know, heavily dominated by Asia. I mean, I've seen numbers kind of six to 8,000, you know, arcades in Asia alone, and you know, it multiples higher than even all of Europe and US combined.
Right. Dave and Buster's, it doesn't quite match up in that regard, you're saying. Though they're doing their best. So you all have moved, though. You kind of eased back from LBEs and said, look, we can take a slice of some bigger, ambitious project we would do. You know, maybe the Walking Dead project you guys did. Maybe there's a slice there that makes sense for an arcade experience or a location-based experience that can be compelling and but is good for that sort of throughput, maybe in a place like Vegas or some place that has a lot of tourists coming through. But you're also getting into sort of more traditional non-VR gaming opportunities built on these same platforms. So talk about that decision, because that's a gigantic business. And where are you going? Where are you not going? Are you in mobile? Are you in consoles? Are you in PC? What are you doing?
Right. Yeah. So we started, you know, just trying to make the best games possible. And so one of the games that really resonated with folks is Creed Rise to Glory. So, you know, you get to lace up the gloves and get in Creed and kind of take out some aggression maybe.
Based on the MGM movie that is a reboot of the Rocky franchise with the extraordinary actor Michael B. Jordan as Apollo Creed's son, but now in a game, right? So you can duke it out,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. There's a training mode. There's a tower of characters that you fight against that gets progressively harder. And it's great. Mark Zuckerberg played it and loved it so much he insisted that it come preloaded on the Oculus unit. So, it's really exciting, and we saw a lot of that enthusiasm kind of carry over to non-VR people. There hasn't been a real boxing game in quite some time, and so we saw some of that pent up demand, and um, are looking to kind of leverage some of the art and our talents to bring that over to non-VR side. But
How well does it translate though? Because I'm trying to think. Because I mean, for one thing, the controls are completely different. If you're in VR, you're actually punching, right? And otherwise, you're on a PC. I mean, on a PlayStation 4, and you're thumbing, which isn't
yeah,
the same thing.
yeah, you can't just port things over. We're really looking to bring kind of a cross reality experience to our players, right? So you can't just port, because VR, is always in first person perspective. The controls, as you mentioned, even the camera angles and things like that, aren't going to be all the same. So it's definitely a different game. It's Big Rumble Boxing Creed Champion, so it's the non VR. You know, it's a different skew, right? And so I think that that's some of the challenge in marketing, I think, is um, helping people understand, how the game is different, that it's not just a port, and while still selling the fun of things like that. So it's been an interesting experience, and we look to kind of bring this cross reality coming forward. So right now we've kind of gone backwards. We launched VR, and now we're going to non-VR 2D. In the future,
I think we're all devolving, Michael. Though, so I think it's all right. It's good timing. We're all definitely going back to like churning our own butter and stuff. So this is
yeah, I've never seen so many people.
soon you guys are going to be doing board games. I can just see it now.
Yeah, and making sourdough bread, I think, is
Sourdough
another
board game.
popular. Yeah, yeah.
So you're kind of walking back, but it's a much bigger market. I mean, it's like factors of a lot of zeros bigger market than VR has been. I think we've seen sales of maybe 10 million, 12 million units of VR headsets, something like that. Is that right? Or maybe a little bit
Yeah,
more.
yeah, it's kind of anywhere from 8 to 10, probably. If you're on the higher range, you could probably go up to 12. We've seen great traction with the new Quest 2 units coming on. There've been some articles, not just us, but other folks, have seen organic growth of their libraries, 5 to 10x over the last couple of weeks as Quest units come on. So with that price point and the detethering.
Well, I think Michael, I hopefully will. He got detethered, I'm afraid. So hopefully he'll come right back. Are you there? Oh dear.
So
Michael, you're having a little erratic connection there. So let's start. So you started with we lost you at detethering.
Yeah, so with the price point and the detethering, right? So you no longer have to be attached to your computer or PlayStation. That's going to give you much more free movement. It feels more natural, and so we think this is just kind of the beginning of kind of that massive adoption.
Okay, yeah, they've dealt with some of the really key pain points. A, vomiting, not necessarily a big consumer benefit. They've gotten rid of that pretty much. B, much higher res. C, you don't have a tail coming out of the back of your head like you're in a H.R. Geiger painting, because it's a standalone thing, and it's a lot lighter and cheaper, right? So those are kind of like the big pain points that they've sort of worked through over the last 3 years. So it's gotten pretty good. What's still there as a challenge for companies like yours making VR experiences in the VR for home? What's still there that needs to be dealt with?
Yeah, I mean, one is still just the diversity of platforms and the types of games people want. So even though it is a subset, um, that subset still has as wide of a range of genres they want to play.
Well, I think this is the technology gods giving us a giggle
As
here.
anyone. And so
Yeah, you kind of broke up there again, Michael. So there's still a wide array of genres people want to play, and
yeah, and the other thing is just marketing across the different platforms. So, Oculus has its own platform, PlayStation has its own platform, Steam. I mean, you can even buy, I bought Star Wars Squadrons on Epic Store and you can play VR. So there's a lot of different stores and genres. And so there's still just, keeping track and kind of figuring out the product market fit across each of these platforms and how much to invest from a marketing perspective and budget perspective is still very difficult.
yeah, it's sort of like I mean, it's the kind of challenge that we had for years and years and years on the consoles, and particularly back when we still have three. Do you put your money in the PlayStation or in the Xbox or in the back in the day the NES or the whatever it was, the Saturn or the Jaguar system, whatever it was. You had to kind of choose your platforms and do it. And that's what's going on right now here, because nobody's stuff plays on somebody else's stuff. So as you sit there and try to pick winners for where your company goes, I mean, it looks like you guys are on everything every time. Is that kind of what's happening now, or are you picking some first or getting exclusives like they used to do, like Sony would pay for exclusives? Are you doing exclusives and that kind of stuff? I mean, how's that dynamic working?
Yeah, it's a great question. Right now, we're still kind of spreading across different. From a distribution point, we're definitely going across all the different platforms. I think from a marketing perspective, the harder part is picking what platforms we invest in from a marketing perspective. And that really ties to the gameplay. And so, trying to figure that out ahead of time. So, for example, Walking Dead, um, trying to figure out from the gameplay what platform um, it's more conducive to. So, for example, is it more conducive to Oculus Play or like console, which is maybe more casual, or
I think anybody that
PC
spends
players?
time on Mark Zuckerberg's platforms is probably already kind of Walking Dead, but that's just me.
And on the PC side, it's still more hardcore. So kind of trying to figure these things out and putting budget against it is tougher, and the budgets are smaller, so you have less time and runway to kind of optimize.
Yeah, how do you even, I mean, one of the things that's sort of interesting, how do you even find your audience? How do you market to them? Because it is a relatively small audience. It's a very specialized audience in a lot of ways. And it's balkanized even further into multiple platforms. You just do on platform advertising? Are you doing a lot of social media stuff? What are you doing to even find those people, say, hey, we've got a boxing game. It's a knockout. Ha ha ha.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, how do you even do, or a Walking Dead game? How do you do that? Like with Walking Dead, I guess you probably walk back to the places where there are Walking Dead fans, right? So maybe it's the Walking Dead blog or the Walking Dead website or whatever. I mean, I'm just trying to think how you would do it.
Yeah, with the IP, I think you definitely start with fans of that, and in theory, it should bring down your marketing costs. But right, there is still another
in theory,
layer.
right?
Yeah, but there's still another, right? Like, what's the subset of Walking Dead fans that also
Right.
own a VR headset? I mean,
Right.
that, and unless they're in some Facebook group and happen to like both of those things, it's more going to be kind of contextual, or we have good relationships with kind of the more specific industry, right? Upload VRs of the world and things like that. So we definitely take that approach, and then finding influencers that make content that's relevant. Video still tells the story, but the issue is 40 to 60% of gamers use ad blockers. And so getting in front of them with compelling content has only become more difficult. But YouTube and Twitch seem to be the places where folks that want to make that purchasing decision kind of come to seek out information.
Yeah. Do you get any benefit with Facebook in terms of extra visibility, extra connection, their support and marketing when you've got it on the Oculus platform?
They'll certainly help push more on the individual storefronts. I think the other hard part, kind of tying things back to your earlier question, is each of these storefronts. So when I'm talking about storefronts, right, like the Oculus store or the PlayStation store, they all have different abilities to market and to get in front of people. So even understanding the intricacies of who I can target within the different platforms is very difficult. So how that kind of came to fruition. So at least I don't know what the PlayStation store will look like now, but when I was at PUBG, we couldn't target people that had already bought our game in order to market expansion packs, battle passes. Whereas
you couldn't
we
target
could not.
them?
We
How
could
come?
not. Just they hadn't invested in the ag technology infrastructure on the back end.
Oh, okay. So your hands were tied a little bit there, because it's
But
not like the people that already own the game would like more of the game, that you'd want to connect with those guys, right? Who would do that?
Right. And it's not like they get any of that money either.
Right.
But on the Xbox platform, of course, we could. So even just knowing the differences between the platforms and like keeping up to date on your ability to target people within these different stores, it is very difficult, and it takes, we lean on our agencies, we lean on the platforms themselves to kind of inform us and keep us up to date on product roadmaps and all the new things that are coming to target the customers that we want.
Yeah. You mentioned Walking Dead, you mentioned Creed, you've also got a Westworld game, though as we were discussing our little prep call, I guess it was yesterday, though it feels like it was 100 years ago, early in the pandemic, but it was actually just yesterday. The Westworld VR experience is an immersive experience in a real world immersive experience that is about a real world experience, right? So it's so
Right.
meta, it makes my little tiny head spin like a top. How do you do that? It's not even a game, right? You said it's more of it's an experience. It's a walking around thing, walking around in Westworld. Let's talk about it.
Yes, it takes place around season 2, and you wake up as an android, and there's some puzzles, and it is really more of an experience than a game, and I think that's what VR kind of started out as.
Yeah.
And people want to escape, and the worlds they want to escape to are generally worlds that they are, right, like very few people, unless you're James Cameron or some genius, right, like you're thinking of some world like Avatar or something kind of totally abstract like that, right? Most people want to go to the Marvel universe or go run around as in
Something
Star
they
Wars or
know.
whatever.
They want to go where
Mhm.
they know, but don't completely know, right? They want to explore something that's otherworldly and yet a world that they're familiar with, right?
Exactly. And so Westworld really plays on that. And I think, there's going to be I think there's going to be more of a mix of kind of storytelling experiences, almost more akin to movies, more akin to like a movie VR experience to maybe a game VR experience, if that makes sense. And you're going to see the
Yeah,
blending.
absolutely. I mean, to some extent, you mentioned Cameron. I mean, really, Avatar, a little thin on plot, let's just be frank, but an extraordinary world and visually stunning and 3D and immersive in its way, in a way that film allowed. And it took you to literally another world. And that was more about the experience. And he had a through line going on there. But I mean, it was really just, oh my God, we're in whatever the planet was with blue people that were projected into. So you're saying you expect more of that to come along as we figure out new ways to sort of take advantage of the medium, and really a lot of games are being like that. I mean, a game like Red Dead Redemption, great game, hard to say. is this immersive experience, and you move through this space, and different things happen, which you largely control. But that in a VR experience doesn't feel like a big shift, right? It's kind of like that's where a big chunk of VR might be going. Is that what you guys are doing? Part of what you guys are doing?
Yeah, I think, I think IP holders are thinking about it more holistically, right? And right, creating worlds that people can at first kind of experience, but, and this is where things get tricky. I mean, eventually kind of create your own world with some type of guide rails, right? Like you want people to be creating these compelling Westworld experiences on your own without having to pay, engineers or things like that, and create a
Right.
platform. Of course, right? As an IP holder, you also worry, what are, they're gonna do some weird stuff to my robot, or they're going to,
Right.
even, right? Yeah, like
I mean,
there's,
like, we just need to look at fan fiction and
yeah,
shipping, as they call it, the relationships that are completely not envisioned by the creator of the original IP, and all of a sudden, I don't know, Spock and Kirk are having a relationship or whatever. It's like, no, that wasn't what Gene Roddenberry was talking about, but no, this is what we're into. And it's like, okay. So you can just imagine that in a VR space where it's even more compelling and realistic. How do you control, and should you control? Because IP guys want to control everything. I mean, just look at the gigantic Bible for Star Wars, right? It's like this big.
yep,
But there is this really interesting question as the metaverse comes, and this is where we're all headed, whether we like it or not. That fan-generated, fan-immersed, and connected otaku experience is really crucial to the long-term life of the IP, right?
yeah, yeah. I think that's right. And you can only make so many movies, and people are only going to interact with that entertainment so much, right? So, my favorite movie is Star Wars. I've seen it maybe 10 times, like throughout my life. So it's
You mean Star
20.
Wars: A New Hope or Star Wars?
Yes, yes. A New
All
Hope.
right, let's just clarify, because I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
it's been
Sorry. Yeah,
renamed a little
thank
bit.
you.
I mean, just to
Yeah.
specify.
But, so I've interacted with that movie maybe 25, 30 hours of my life. I've interacted with Star Wars games hundreds of hours, and I've been a Star Wars
I
character.
have. I have too. I mean, it's like, right, Battlefield, or was it Battlegrounds?
Yeah,
Battlefield.
Battlefront,
Battle. Battle. That was
X-Wing,
great.
TIE Fighter,
Yeah.
Knights of the Old Republic, all
Oh
these
yes.
games.
Knights of the Old Republic, crazy. That was fantastic. Those were the BioWare ones were awesome. Yeah, and that was set in the universe, but 4,000 years earlier or whatever it was. Totally different dynamics in so many ways, and yet hugely successful and completely immersive. And you're right, you spend 100, 200 hours in that game, and you come up and go, I need a lightsaber just to
Yeah,
get through the day.
exactly.
It's better than a
Exactly.
can opener. So you're right. So as intense as you are in the movie, the game experience can be this thing that takes days and days, and it's just getting more and more immersive. So how's it been for you guys to work with the IP holders? Are they very controlled? Is there room for them to allow? I don't know, when we get to level creation in VR, how that's going to happen, what that's going to look like. I mean, it's like we've had it since Doom. We've had it for regular games. How do we do that in the VR space?
Yeah. I mean, that's definitely the goal. As far as the IP holders go, I think, I haven't, I wasn't around kind of 20, 30 years ago when games were first kind of being licensed. But I think the difference now is that the people doing the licensing are also gamers. So my counterparts at MGM are gamers, right? They want a cool game. They've played enough games, like they understand it, and it's not just some line item that they're trying to check through to get to quarterly earnings,
Well,
right? So
MGMs are particularly interesting. I used to work there a long time ago, but they're particularly interesting because they were the first, IP-based game came from them that actually was good. The GoldenEye Bond game that was on Nintendo was by every critic I've ever seen. That was the first one that was like, oh, this is a butt-kicking game. So they have this sort of heritage there a little bit on their consumer product side. It's like, we kind of got to bring it. All we've got is they've got 4,000 movies and 10,000 hours of TV and all that, but really they're just trafficking an IP, so they better not screw it up. It's not just an ancillary check that they collect and then forget about, which is so notorious for so many of the big studios. But you're right. So they're gamers. It's also a generational shift now. Everybody that's in consumer products is a gamer, which makes me wonder if the guy who's taking over streaming over at Disney, who used to run consumer products for Disney, Kareem Daniel, is a gamer, because he was over there for a while. But he's now the highest ranking black person, I think, in Hollywood in terms of the power of his job. So cool for him. Congrats to him. And Channing Dungey, who just came back to Warner Media. So we've got some black people in some high-ranking places and studios. How wonderful is that? That's pretty cool. But in terms of the game licensing stuff, you've been around it for a little while. Is it easier, harder, changing, evolving any in this new shift to streaming and different focuses by the studios themselves?
Yeah, I think it's easier. I think it's easier because they're gamers. I think it's easier because, now they see they're taking a more holistic approach, right? And so now the game and the movie, they understand the synergies and all these things just lead to kind of more outsized returns. So, they're right, they're constantly keeping us abreast of the latest developments on the movie and how we can incorporate certain things into our game, or timing, particularly around timing and kind of syncing up marketing spend. So I think it's gotten easier in that sense. I think it's just gotten harder because the expectations are so much greater now, right? And with the economics and particularly cinema as it is, certainly they're going to look for the interactive pieces of the business to kind of make up for some of that revenue in the next 18 to 24 months.
Yeah, you talk about timing. It's got to be nearly impossible at this point to figure out timing on. I mean, TV show production has been hampered badly as well, and new stuff that's coming down. It's hard to do a VR experience about, I don't know, Real Housewives of Beverly Hills in any kind of compelling way. And I don't think that's an experience anybody wants to be in the middle of. They just want to be able to leave. Like, yeah, ooh, that's weird, and get out of there. But I mean, that's what's getting produced these days, and it's going to be interesting to see. Take this moment real quickly. Laura, voice of God at Digital Media Wire, could you put up the poll so we get a little bit of a sense of the room, such as it may be? Which next generation platform are you most excited for? The usual suspects, with a couple I didn't quite see coming. Amazon Luna, which is their all-you-can-eat game in a cloud service. Amazon Stadia is the same. PS5, Xbox Series X. And hopefully, maybe you'll tell us in chat what you want. If you don't have anyone, if those don't work for you, maybe you got something else. What's the future of VR with PCs, consoles, standalone ones, or mobile, or something else that none of us can see coming because we're not as visionary as you are? And finally, what's the most difficult piece in building the metaverse? We've talked about it in some of the conversations I've had. I'm sure many of you all are. If you're here, you're probably a big fan of something like Ready Player One. They have a sequel coming out any moment now. What's the most difficult piece? Economy / monetization to server-side hardware. Nothing gets people going like server-side hardware conversations. I got to tell you, Michael. Software, at-home hardware, like what do the consumers actually have, or other? So what's the big challenge? So take a moment to click off the things you think, and we'll circle back in a couple minutes. If you have any questions you want to lob in, throw them in the Q&A. Make sure to put up your LinkedIn connection. So anyway, so at this point, I noticed that you guys have raised a lot of money. Survios over 7 years has raised close to $200 million, which is great. More money than I make in a week, I have to say. But your backers include people like Samsung. Samsung's had some erratic forays into VR with headsets that were tied to its Android phones. What's your relationship with them at this point?
Yeah, purely financial right now. I mean, there might be other conversations above my pay grade that I'm not privy to, but really that last round of financing, we focused heavily on the Asian investors, just because we think, particularly in VR, there's a lot of future forward investors and people over there. So it's always good to kind of keep a pulse on that front, and have access to particularly Korea and Japan as big gaming markets.
Yeah. Curious what your thoughts are in terms of the new platforms that are coming. Since we did ask the room what they thought, we should get your thoughts on the new consoles. We've got PS5, we've got the Microsoft Xbox Series something. I can never keep track of it. Series X and S and whatever. The new Microsoft Xbox. It's actually a box, really box shaped. Coming in mid-November, both of them, and Oculus Quest, I think is here, right? The Oculus Quest 2, I think is here or about here. So, or anything else out there. I mean, but let's talk about those three platforms, because all of them are going to have a lot of money behind them this holiday. What does it mean for you guys as you look at opportunities? And actually, because of what's happening with things like Apple rolling out the iPhone 12 with 5G. I think that's an interesting thing, because they're clearly spending a lot of money in augmented reality experiences and opportunities. And the game streaming sites that you mentioned in the poll, the second poll question, will certainly be helped by all this. So what are the platforms that are most interesting to you, and what are the ones that the company as a whole is sort of really focused on as an opportunity for what they do?
Yeah, so I think the most interesting thing about Xbox and PlayStation in this generation is, for the first time, they're very differentiated, and they're still competitors, but they're going after two completely different things. So on the Xbox side, they very much have just they've created a cheap streaming box essentially that connects to the internet as a platform to build out their subscription streaming service, right? So they want to get you on a monthly cadence, just keep paying that money to Xbox every month, and you get a
you
library
choose your
of games.
device in terms of where you want to play, right? It could be a phone, it could be your Xbox, it could be your PC, but you choose as long as you're paying the subscription. That's all they care about, right?
Right. Well, they've run into a little bit of an issue on the phone, as Epic has seen with Apple, but yes, in theory,
Who saw that coming?
in theory, that's right. And PlayStation is kind of stuck to its old tried and true playbook, right? Go big, go for the core gamer, and you're going to anchor the release and your other marketing beats across kind of large tentpole games that are exclusive to the platform. So they launched with Spider-Man. They have a bunch of other kind of high-powered IP that I'm sure they'll roll out. I think from Survios specific perspective, I think the PSVR 2 announcement is kind of what we're looking for now. Not surprisingly, they're going to focus a lot of resources on the new platform. But I don't have any information or anything, but I have to think in the next kind of 12 to 18 months, there'll be some type of announcement and rollout of PSVR 2.
And the PSVR was the best-selling headset of the last generation by, I think, quite a ways, if I recall correctly. So that'll be interesting. My old buddy Xin Chung has asked, it's a little, he tends to speak in semaphore, I think, but he's obviously at a plane much higher than my simple brain. But he says, riff about open VR platform jailbreak from Facebook, the side quest Hack Bounty by Palmer Luckey. So Palmer Luckey, who was the founder of Oculus Quest, went off on a new quest and is doing his stuff. Where's he headed? What do you think is going to come out of all that? How about an open riff? You've been queued up by Zen. Who's got some background in the business, to put it mildly.
Yeah, so I mean, essentially what he's getting at is right now, the Oculus, as we kind of talked about, is kind of an enclosed system, right? So you need to have a Facebook account eventually, and all of that
is controversial, right? People are a lot of gamers are like, I don't want a Facebook account just so I can play my game.
It's funny of the negative kind of reviews of Oculus Quest 2, I mean, that by far was the #1 complaint.
Really?
And
Okay.
the other thing is it's years off, right? But that just kind of shows you kind of the the apprehension I think that people have giving that company their data.
Yeah,
And
even more of it, because now it'll be like where you're looking and how your heart's
it'll be your
pounding and all
program. I
this
mean,
kind of stuff, you know?
if people browse the internet on the Oculus browser, if all of those things, right? If it extends to AR, right? Mark Zuckerberg wants access to all those ads, all those impressions. He wants to, where Google won in kind of the 2D world, right? He wants to take all of that, the search, the contextual advertising, the ad stack. He wants all of that in Oculus and owned by Facebook.
Yeah.
And so, Palmer Luckey, sees his baby and, I think wants as many people using Oculus as possible. And so he's kind of working on devising some software hacks to, I think, allow you to break free from that Facebook kind of
Yeah, it's jailbreaks like what people have
ecosystem.
done with iOS, right? It basically allows you to put your own stuff on iOS that Apple hasn't vetted. And that's always complicated. So he's trying to do that with Facebook. That's interesting, with Oculus.
Mhm.
We'll see how that works, because it's possible that Facebook may not be excited about that. That Zuckerberg may say you can't do that.
Yeah, they might be taking a few bucks out of his pocket. So it'll be interesting to see, it might end up like whack-a-mole, right? Like you just keep trying to take out these different software hacks.
I'd rather it be guacamole than whack-a-mole, but that's just me. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the broader game business and how you see it going. It's roughly $150 billion business, according to a couple of different analysts. Some people have been skeptical about some of that, but about half of it is the mobile space, which is gigantic, 75, $80 billion. Are you all thinking about the mobile space at all? That is a different animal from what you guys do. It's a different monetization and marketing and everything else, but it's a big business. Is that something you all think about? And as we look at, again, the mobile space with gaming as a service and with 5G, what are your all's thoughts about how you create games that can work also on that kind of device?
Yeah, we're not really thinking about mobile right now in kind of the from the purest gaming point of view. I mean, we think about it in one, that's where people spend time, so it's still kind of a competitor in some indirect way, right? And then two, from a marketing perspective, and I, we dealt with this issue a lot at Blizzard. It's, we make non-mobile games, but our customers still spend X amount, half a day or whatever on their mobile device, right? So if you want to get in front of them and get them aware, you still need to play in that space. So that's kind of the extent at which we think of mobile. I think as kind of core gaming, I don't think we're even at, I think there's still half a step that needs to be done in just getting kind of core games to mobile. So you've seen people kind of create like clips to put controllers on. Like, at the heart of the issue is the controller, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it
And
just doesn't. I mean, I don't care what you do. It's still a pain. If you're doing a match 3 game, great. But if you're doing Warzone, it's
mhm,
less great by orders of magnitude. So
mhm.
it's
And even
absolutely
if
right.
you
So
have,
they'll stick it on there, and you can do this and all that. That's great.
yeah, but what I mean, you're gonna bring that on to the car or like on your trip to the mall or right, like you're just gonna have a controller in your back pocket and a clip. I think it's still, even once that is figured out, I don't know that um, I don't know that that's going to kind of drastically change things.
Okay. So there's still a lot of reasons to, those are still going to be different worlds most of the time, different kinds of gameplay, different kinds of games, different kinds of gamers. So not that ne'er the twain shall meet, but maybe they won't spend a lot of time together. Different places, different mindsets. Laura, voice of God from Do, there we go. Here's the poll results. So we've got about a half betting on PlayStation 5 as the next generation platform they're most excited for. A little bit of interest, tiny bit of interest in Stadia and Luna. But Xbox right in there, it's 40%, not bad. Future of VR, overwhelmingly on standalone devices that don't require a console, don't require a PC or a mobile device. I think that that's interesting. So we've got 2/3 of those polled think it's going to be the standalones. So it's basically the Oculus Quest 4 or whatever it ends up being. That's lightweight, sits on your head, lots of power, amazing graphics, and gives you the fluidity to do whatever you damn well please. It sounds like that's what people are betting on, and maybe you are too, right, Michael?
Yeah, I think that's right. You know, these things match the headset is basically just, you know, your cell phone screen kind of converted. So, you know, as that technology plugs along, you know, we'll see kind of the natural evolution on that end.
It does. I should circle back and just say, you know, are you? I mean, just personally, do you think I mean, I think it's a good comparison about the different models. I mean, I look at it as the Microsoft approach is like Netflix subscription model. You know, we'll give you lots of stuff. You pick some of it's not that great, but you pick what you want, and you get access all the time as long as you keep giving us money. And Sony's more like traditional Hollywood, blockbuster driven, other stuff, but really basically blockbuster driven. And you pay a lot for every once in a while. And what's your thought among all of those approaches that will work, and where's the switch come in all this?
Yeah, I think, you know, like mobile has its own kind of piece, I think Switch does too. I'm not sure that the hardware on Switch is so differentiated. I mean, right now it's the games that differentiate that platform.
Like always,
So
right? I mean, it's always
yeah,
been, you know, they're game makers, so that's been
yeah,
everything.
and that's why I think PSVR in the near to medium term future is still going to be, you know, incredibly powerful. I mean, one, the price point, but two, just, you know, Sony is going to invest in some awesome games and game experiences. So, you know, that's going to keep them in the game, for lack of a better word, for sure.
Okay, all right. And then finally, the most difficult piece in building out the metaverse, we have a tie. Kissing your sister. I used to say in football, about 40% on each side say at-home hardware, the quality of the hardware, price, and all the stuff that we've talked about, but tied with how you make money off of it. And I guess that's a good reason to ask you, after you guys have raised boatloads of cash, how are you making money? Is it going okay? I mean, does the monetization make sense now? Does it square up?
Yeah, it squares up. I think the VR industry from a business model perspective is a few years behind kind of the mainstream, in that right now mostly Wall Street has pushed these gaming companies to have, you know, always on games that have, you know, in theory, you know, an endless cycle of kind of content coming out. And so VR doesn't really, you know, have those kinds of long tail games yet. I think we're going to get there, but I think that's kind of the next iteration. So you have a game that, you know, like Warcraft or like Call of Duty,
Destiny.
Right?
I mean, I'm a Destiny geek, man. It's
exactly.
you know, they've got their new DLC coming, or the new season's coming up, and you know, the next year of stuff is coming up in a couple of weeks, but they're living in a persistent world, so you know, they're not having to reinvent things. But I think we're going to have to wrap it up there. Unfortunately, this is the last of season 1, and give it up for Michael Medrano of Survios, the VP of Marketing, for a really good rundown, I think, on where VR and the bigger gaming world are going. Michael, where can people connect with you over there at Survios?
Yeah, you can find me at LinkedIn, Michael Medrano, or on Twitter at Michael J. Medrano.
Okay, and I am available on LinkedIn at David L. Bloom and on Twitter at David Bloom. Love to connect with folks, so shoot me an invite. And Oh, I hate to say it, Elmer, you asked a question too darn late. He wants to know what the future of LAN parties is. I didn't know they had a future, but I do think we'll have some interesting LANs without wires soon enough. But anyway, thank you all for everybody that's come and seen Let's Do Lunch over the last 7 months of craziness. I hope that it has brought a little bit of joy in your lives and some knowledge and connection. And I wish that to all of you in the months ahead that may be challenging and certainly will be interesting. So with that, we will wrap up season 1. Thanks, everybody. Talk to you later.
Thanks, David.